Hey guys, my name is Mili Namukasa, and for this research presentation, I chose to do gender differences in personality traits of software engineers by Daniel Russell and Clash Jean Stahl. So several scholars have proposed to close the gender gap that exists in many fields through proactive policies and in also software engineering. Studying how gender differences influences the relationship within software engineering or software organization has an essential theoretical and practical implication. It's clear that from these studies that gender plays a critical role in effective software development in both corporate development teams and in open source communities. For example, women who work in domains dominated by men face more gender bias, and software engineering is such a domain. Software development is inherently a teamwork, and so it's very important to understand the personalities within the genders available and how to best maximize those personalities. Studies suggest that teams with gender diversity have fewer community spells, shorter issue fixing time, increased politeness, and higher levels of productivity. The aim of this study is to establish generalizable results, advancing stable and long-lasting contributions through representative sample study. So this paper, in a nutshell, explores gender differences and focuses on the two main genders, that is, males and females. The research question answered in this research paper is: how do personality traits differ in men and women software engineers? In order to answer these questions, the researchers conducted a large sample scale study and then performed a network analysis to study the relations among these personality traits. They used the Bayesian independent t-test to analyze the degree to which men and women software engineers differ in terms of their personality traits. So the related work, personality traits. A personality can be defined as a set of patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving based on a set of traits that are predictors of an individual's behavioral action. The first personality trait-based theory was developed in the 1930s with pioneering work of Carl Gustav Jung. However, it was not until the mid-1970s that traits were operationalized employing measurement instruments. Since then, personality-based theories have flourished, and several models have been proposed, such as the Minnesota Multifacet Personality Inventory. The software engineering research community has adopted several of these models, and the two most commonly used personality theories in software engineering are the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and the 5-factor model. So the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, it goes by the short form of MBTI. It considers four dichotomous dimensions: extroversion versus introversion, that is, indicating whether an individual directs her attention to the external world or to other people in the inner world of experiences and ideas. Sensing versus intuition, indicating whether an individual perceives the world by observing reality or through imagination. Thinking versus feeling, indicating whether an individual makes decisions based on logical reasoning or beliefs. Judging versus perception, indicating whether an individual considers the social world as a planned or unexpected and spontaneous. Together, these four dimensions define 16 different possible combinations. Each combination represents a distinct personality, and they are labeled using the 4-character strings specified above, such as INFJ, ENFJ, IESTP, and other things like that. A study actually suggested that many software developers with an ENFJ, that is extroversion, intuition, feeling, and judging, are more efficient when they work with team leaders exhibiting the INTJ personality type, and that is introversion, intuition, thinking, and judging. While the Myers-Briggs classification is widely used, it has been criticized for lack of validity and utility, such as unstable test retest reliability and inaccurate predictive validity. It also does not correlate with personality scales and is not consistent with research evidence. Scholars have observed that the Myers-Briggs scholars have discovered that the Myers-Briggs tap indicator theory does not measure qualitatively distinct types, generating quasi-random traits assignments. So, in conclusion, the MBTI cannot provide sound basis for interpreting personality. In order to change that around, in order to address the issues within the Myers-Briggs test, the McCree and John developed the 5-factor model that's known as OCEAN, and it covers openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, and neuroticism. In this model, the personalities are characterized by either bright or dark. Bright traits have high scores, except for emotionality, and the dark traits have low scores. There are also specific models such as the dark triad and the dark triad, I guess that's how you say it, addresses narcissism, psychopathy, and mischievousness, and it measures these dark traits, and when the scores are low, the dark triad model, on the other hand, measures bright personality traits with low scores and dark personality traits with high scores, in a nutshell. So if an individual is a psychopath or is a narcissist or mischievous, they'll have higher scores, which is a negative connotation in that sense. So on to the next one. Gender studies in personality research. Gender is often included in studies as a variable, but not always recorded in the platforms, such as Stack Overflow. There has been a considerable attention to personality research in software engineering over the past 15 years. However, some of these studies were conducted with student teams that completed small projects with agile methods, and they didn't focus on the main target. Several studies focus on team performance, linking the MBTI personality types to team members. So, for the research design of this study, the researchers conducted a sample study considering the individual as a unit of analysis. They adopted the Von Drum and others guidelines for conducting and reporting Bayesian analysis. And the research instruments used included the bright personality traits, and this is the They updated five-factor model. Instead of Ocean, they adopted Hexacle, which is humility, honesty, humility, which covers sincerity, fairness, greed, avoidance, and modesty. Emotionality, which covers fearfulness, anxiety, dependency, and sentimentality. Extroversion, which is social self-esteem, social boldness, sociability, and liveliness. Agreeableness, which is forgivingness, gentleness, flexibility, patience. Conscientiousness, which is organization, diligence, perfectionism, and prudence. Openness to experience, which is aesthetic appreciation, inquisitiveness, creativity, and unconventionality. To the way that this was deployed, they adapted a brief inventory question which contains 24 questions that cover the facets of the 6 personality traits above. This was because the most common instruments are 100 questions, and some comprise of 60 items. And the drawback of having these extensive measurement instruments is that it takes considerable time to complete, which may negatively affect the response rate in the survey. So hence adapting the 24 questions, making it short, and with the hopes of keeping the sample users, the sample study engaged. Like I said before, I just touched on the dark personality traits right here, which is narcissism, psychopathy, and mischievousness, and they're considered to be the dark triad because of their malevolent qualities. And in the both of these tables, table 1 explains the bright personality traits, while table 2 explains the dark personality traits, and shows how an individual may get low scores or high scores on each of them. Like for example, for extroversion, it's defined as the standard features of this dimension include sociability, talkativeness, assertiveness, and expressiveness. When an individual scores low scores on extroversion, they prefer being alone, feels easily tired when they're with other people, dislikes small talk, and never starts a conversation. And an individual scores high on extroversion when the individual is optimistic and energetic, at the center of their attention, starts conversations, enjoys others' company, wide social circle, expresses opinions before thinking. So that means that individual scores high on extroversion. However, emotionality is a little bit backwards compared to the others personality traits. Like for an individual scores low when they're easygoing, relaxed, and does not worry about things, emotionally stable, and never sad or depressed. And then individuals scores high when they feel easily stressed and triggered, worried and anxious, enjoys strong emotional bonds with other people, and need emotional support from others. And so it's kind of like backwards when you see when you look at the scoring. And then on this hand, we have the dark triad of these personality traits, and they're pretty much the opposite of the hexacle, which is when an individual score is high, it is considered a good thing. With the dark triad, when the individual score is high, is pretty scary. So it covers narcissism, psychopathy, and mischievousness. With narcissism, a narcissist personality trait is related to the gratification of one's idealized self through self-centered, selfish, and egoistic behaviors. Objective estimation. For low scores, there's objective estimation of personal qualities: down to earth, treat others with respect, and humble. An individual scores high in narcissism if they are arrogant, have a sense of superiority in relationship to others, a sense of entitlement and dominance towards other people who are considered inferior. Then psychopathy, the personality dimension. This personality dimension is characterized by antisocial behaviors such as lack of empathy and remorse. An individual scores low if they experience guilt and shame after transgressions, highly concerned about the morality of actions, sensitive and receptive of others' feelings, accepting and trusting of other opinions and work. An individual scores high in psychopathy if they're highly self-confident and social, assertive, poorly empathetic, cruel, and exploitative behaviors. They lack planning and foresight, and they're very impulsive and thrill-seeking. Then Machiavellism is named after Niccolo Machiavelli, the author of The Prince. This trait features manipulation to gain a self-interested goal, exploiting others in the process of achieving that goal. An individual scores low on Machiavellianism when they pursue value-driven ethical behavior, selfless dedication to other people, altruistic and team player for the benefit of others, and can be naive and ingenuous. An individual will score high in this dark triad when they focus only on their ambitions, lack moral principles and value, lack of moral principles and value, money and power over interpersonal relationships. Their unemotional coldness, believe that manipulation is a key to success. So these two tables they go into detail in the bright personality traits and the dark triad that are being explored in this research presentation. The research, for measurement instruments, in order to measure the bright traits, the researchers adopted the measurement instrument by De Vries, which followed his instructions of factor computation. And for the dark triad, they used what has been labeled as the Dirty Dozen, which is a brief instrument widely used in social psychology. And they followed the instructions from their respective instruments, and some items, like we can see, were reverse coded and were computed through the mean function, which is a standard procedure when using highly validated instruments such as these. So data collection. So in order to collect the data that was used in this research, the researchers conducted a sample survey which is suitable to achieve generalizable findings. They used Prolific, which is a dedicated data collection platform for academic research, and it was widely used in computer science and as well as other fields. It used Qualtrics to administer the questions and that were shared on Prolific, focused on representativeness, sample size, and ethics. For representativeness, data was collected through using a cluster sampling strategy, and the specialized platform to collect data offers. So, in order to collect data, they use cluster sampling strategy, and there is benefits to using a cluster sampling strategy through a specific platform because of the reliability, replicability, and data quality. Particularly when it's compared to the population sample. And data reliability, replicability, and data quality are pivotal in any study. So the prolific platform that was used for data collection supports the process, a systemic process to collect high quality data. While collecting data, the researchers implemented several strategies, and the overall process of collecting of these strategies is presented in this picture right here. So there was a pre-screening that had over first of all, Prolific had 75,296 users on the whole entire platform. And so through pre-screening, the researchers pre-screened the members of the data collection platform according to this criteria. The members were required to have knowledge of the software development techniques, do computer programming for a living, use technology at work, and have an approval rate of 100%. And so, with following this strategy, the researchers were able to go from 75,000 users down to 2,897 users. And then random screening was then administered, and the randomized study advising that they conducted a randomized study advising that members selected would have participated in another study. So from the potential 2,897, the number dropped to 760 members after the randomized study. And then they did a competency screening. And then the next thing was performed was a competency screening. And then after the competency screening, there was an invitation to survey. The questionnaire that was administered at this stage included 3 competence-based questions. One was about software design, and the other one was about programming. Then from competence, from invitation survey, they were down to 491 members. And then for quality screening, those that were put in the quality screening were the final number. There were 491 responses. 8 responses were excluded because the members failed to recognize their attention checks. So within this questionnaire, within the quality screening, they set up a questionnaire, and the users had to recognize the attention checks that were within. And out of the 491, 8 of those did not catch onto the attention check, and 8 of them were excluded. So for quality screening, it came down to 483 users. So in order to have having a large enough sample size for a study is very important to ensure the generalizability of your findings. So Yeaman suggests that sample size can be defined as n is as right here is n. Sample size is greater than or equal to n, which is population size, divided by 1 plus NE, which is n is population size times level of precision squared. So with this with this formula, it's used to determine the sample size of that is going to be used in the study. So, research ethics. The researchers followed the guidelines of Helsinki, which followed principles such as appropriate considerations for risks and benefits of research study, identifying potential benefits to the studied population, and the study should be carried out by by trained professionals. The interaction with the respondents happens on the prolific platforms. Members may not disclose their identity as one of prolific membership policies, and the questions were directly addressed to the motivated population of respondents available on the prolific platform. So all the interaction between the professionals questioning and the individuals answering questions was performed strictly through the prolific platform to reduce any risks of like anything the evidence being tampered with in this case. So after all is said and done, the sample description. So out of the 483 members or users that were using this research, the frequency showed like 393 were men and 90 were women, which 80 that goes up to 81% men and 18% female, which also supports the claim that software engineering is male dominated. So all the software engineer, all the members of this sample study had to have some type of software engineering knowledge, and after they answered all these questions, most of them had a bachelor's degree in software engineering, and then followed by master's degree. Some had a college, but not some had some type of college education, but no degree. Some had a high school graduate, others had a doctoral degree, and then some had a less than high school degree, and then there was a category for other. And then according to the sample, most of the informants of this study were from the Western countries. As you can see, the number one country with United Kingdom being the biggest contributor, then the US and Portugal, Poland, Italy, and all the other countries listed. So the analysis procedures. There were two analyses conducted, and one of them was the Bayesian analysis to explore the differences between men and women in software professionals, and address the pervasive questions such as how much evidence is available from data against no hypothesis, and then the steps in that were determine whether the parametric or non-parametric determine whether to use parametric or non-parametric alternatives. They divided in this, and then there was a network analysis used to explore the relationships between personality traits and analyzed them by gender. So the results from the Bayesian independent sample t-test, they adapted the parametric variance of Bayesian analysis. The t-test is proposed by Jeffries was used. And Table 8 represents a set of heuristics for interpreting the Bayes factors, and it's comprised of two major steps. The Bayesian analysis is comprised of two major steps that assess the results and then discuss the effects. And as you can see in Table 8, there is heuristics to interpret for interpretation of Bayes factors. It's adapted from Lee and Wagenmakers. And as you can see in the graph below, that shows you the user, the wide, and then the ultra wide, as you can see, as the graph goes. And then the results assessment. First, establish that personality traits significantly differ between men and women. And Table 10 presents a network of personality accepts that there may be feedback between traits. This means that while personality traits tend to be quite stable over a person's lifetime, specific events or contexts may alter behavior and patterns that is typically associated with a specific trait. As you can see, table 10 presents the BF10 values with which indicate the likelihood of observation under H1 versus HO, and four factors have larger than 10. Then psychopathy has a score of 7.50, suggesting that the likelihood of men scoring in this category is 80 more times than under H1 than HO. So the table suggests there is strong evidence for honesty and humility and openness to experience. So when the parametric analysis was done, there was some effects which made considerations about posterior distribution, which possibility distribution are non-treated as a random variable condition and evidence obtained from collected data. Next, assess how the likelihood of the difference between two genders and groups took table 9, looking for higher mean value of their credible interview. And so out of this, the conclusion was women score lower in psychopathy, higher in humility and honesty, humility, higher in emotionality, and higher in openness to experience. So going to the network analysis, then network analysis was used to discover relations among personality traits and analyze the structure relations used in using graph theory and relational algebra. And the data is organized by relational matrix. The nodes of this, as you can see on these graphs, show the personality traits. The edges between the pairs is the relations, and so the red nodes are negative relations. There is a negative relation between, as you can see from here, honesty, humility. There's a strong negative relation between it and machiavellism. And then there is a negative correlation between honesty, humility, and narcissism, as you can see. And positive nodes indicate positive relations. This graph right here represents women, while this graph right here represents women. And the elements are described with the short forms, like this is machiavellism, narcissism, honest, humility, psychopathy, agreeableness, extroversion, conscientiousness, emotionality, and openness to experience. And so as you can see, there in these specific genders, there is some features that have a strong red, which is a strong negative coloration, and then there's some that have a strong blue, which is a strong coloration between two features, two personality traits. So the revelation from the network analysis, um, the dark triad, honesty, humility, agreeableness, are positioned on one side, conscientiousness, openness, extroversion, and emotionality on the other side. Both show how both show tight positive interaction among dark triads, and so when an individual has a dark personality, there is a strong connection in those, and dark traits are negatively linked with bright ones, and so there's a loose negative link on between dark traits and positive ones. For example, in this one, you can see narcissism and emotionality are loosely linked, or you can see yeah. And then in this, we also see in figure 3, in this figure, we also see that in this figure right here, we also see that women have more relations between traits with respect to men, shown by the dense connection of network. The traits in women are colorated. The next thing that the researchers tackle is a centrality analysis, which is to explore which personalities are more influential. Centrality is determined by the degree which a node occupies a central position in the network. The measures that are included are degree of centrality, closeness, and betweenness, as you can see on this picture. So from this picture, we can see that there's according to closeness, the inverse closeness is the inverse sum of the shortest paths from node of interest to the node of the network. We can confirm that there is a higher degree of polarization traits in men than women, and this can be attributed to personality complexity of females, and having more balanced traits than extremes. As you can see from these graphs, you can see that closeness, that there's a higher degree of polarization in traits of men than women, because women are more prone to have a more balanced traits and less extreme. And then the betweenness is the betweenness of, for example, the betweenness of psychopathy and extroversion is close in both genders. While these findings might seem obvious, they have to the best of our knowledge, never been significant scientifically demonstrated so far in the extent of software development. So this study does not seek to point out specific individual detrimental behaviors of employees. It, however, highlights the likelihood of specific traits being prevalent in specific genders. So the implications from this study, there's a summary of the key findings, and with individual job with the theme, findings, and propositions. Individual job performances. Women have higher honesty, humility, personality, which is a strong predictor for job performance compared to men. A proposition for that: including women in software team increases team performance and decreases workspace delinquency such as absenteeism and alcohol abuse. Team performance. Men are emotionally more stable, but have higher psychopathic traits than women, which score higher in openness to experience. And the proposition for those, as both men and women exhibit negative and positive traits linked to teaming mixed gender teams will perform better than non-mixed gender teams. Championing change. Extroversion has the average shortest paths between the other traits. The paths to path through extroversion are shorter than the other traits, and it's also easier to pass from the other traits to extroversion. And a proposition for this is extrovert employees are best suited to drive long-term organization-wide transformation processes. Prototypical transformation. Honesty humility better predicts the direct impact of one node to the entire network, and it's the most central node. Software professionals who score higher on honesty humility trait are best suited to conduct pilot evaluations of new practices and tools. Management of complexity. Women have more relations between the traits with respect to men. More nodes spread with information to others than men's. Women software engineers can deal better with complex social tasks, especially in relation to people. So these are just propositions based off the network analysis that was shown in the previous slide. So conclusion: there are several studies about gender relations related issues in software engineering. There are so many personality-focused studies, but not enough studies to combine both personality and their relationship to gender. Collect data through a sample of almost. The data that was collected for this study was from a sample study of almost 500 software engineers, and it was analyzed by the Bayesian statistics. And four main differences were identified between men and women. Women score less in psychopathy and higher in honesty and humility, and higher in emotionality, and higher in openness to experience to men. This study is only a starting point for future work of gender-related studies and personalities from a range of perspectives. Thank you so much.